Hello all. Okay, so we chatted about audiobooks last time, or I blabbed at you about audiobooks last time, and you can tell by my flannel probably that I really want it to be fall in Chicago. It's not yet. It was in the low 80s today, and I really shouldn't complain because it was mild up through like May. I didn't have to put my window unit in until June. But here we are, and I wish it were fall. So we are in the midst of the fall publishing push right now, as your TBRs can probably tell. And I've read two really atmospheric young adult novels in the last week or so that I thought would be really good to talk about together. And they both have a very Gothic feel to them, which to me just is perfect for fall. It's perfect for that kind of start to the spooky season. So I guess I'm gonna go chronologically in terms of when I read them. And I will start with Laura Weymouth's A Treason of Thorns, her second novel. Her debut came out last year, and that was The Light Between Worlds. Gorgeous novel. So it got a lot of buzz. But I still didn't feel like it was read as much as I wanted to talk about it. So if you heard about it, you probably heard it compared to Narnia. And it is definitely in conversation with Narnia with portal fantasies. So I was very nervous to read her second novel, in the sense that I was very excited for it. But I was like, okay, how do you follow that up? How do you follow up something that is in conversation with such a beloved trope and very particularly a beloved series, and that's such a specific idea? What comes next? And so we got our answer in that A Treason of Thorns, which is out now. I think it came out last week maybe. And this is kind of your, I don't know how to explain it, maybe a haunted house type, except it's not. So it follows a girl, Violet, who is set to inherit her family manor, and she's going to be the keeper of this manor, and there is a title for it that I can't remember right now. But her father, when she's young, and keep in mind her whole life has been about this house, and the boy who sleeps in her cupboard, Win, that's very odd, and it kind of goes into it, but it's just like these things that are just built into the world, and they aren't fully explained, but you can sense the creation there. So she's a very showy author. She's not going to just tell you necessarily, and I appreciate that. But I also trust that her world building is there. She's built it all behind the scenes. I'm not like, oh, this is half baked. No. So Violet gets kicked out because her father has basically, he's the keeper of this manor, but all the deeds are owned by the king. So the king is the ultimate control. And her father tries to free this house because their house is in decline. There's a whole lot going on. So she gets banished, and her father has to stay in the house with the boy who lives in her cupboard. He keeps Win there with him as well. And the idea is that it's a house arrest, but eventually the house will kill him. And they know this. So Violet is going back to this house after the death of her father. And this house that's very sentient and she has loved her whole life has killed her father. And these are the given circumstances we're walking into. And the imagery in this book are just gorgeous. Like, they talk about the memories the house has. So it's kind of a haunted house feeling, as I alluded to, but this idea of these memories are playing out. So Violet sometimes has trouble sleeping because these memories just keep playing out in her room. So these ghostly figures of her ancestors are around. And it's just so well done. I adored it. I thought it was great. I'm very excited because she built another completely succinct standalone world here. I was just very, very happy. I'm very excited to see what she's going to write next. It was absolutely gorgeous. The main character was very strong, and it had this feeling of odd to it. And the house felt malicious, but also caring, and it was its own character. There were a lot of themes at play, but it never beat you over the head with them. I think that, especially in young adult literature, it's more important than just as important as anywhere to explore these big things, and it does. But we also still have to trust our readers. And I feel like this book trusts its readers. It doesn't have to spell it out. Not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but I that's just not my favorite. So this I really loved. I highly recommend it. I recommend both of her books. I know The Light Between Worlds is on sale on Libro.fm this month. I know I mentioned on like every video. Sorry. But I know that because I picked it up on sale. And if you're already a member, you get 30% off the sale price even. But I'm sure the ebook price isn't that bad. It's out in paperback, I believe now, so you definitely pick up a copy, and then get a Treason of Thorns as well. Also, her covers are gorgeous, and I'm just very happy to see these really epic, gorgeous covers going to standalone fantasies, because these aren't series, they're standalones, and they're complete, vivid worlds in and of themselves. So I'm gonna stop just rambling about this book. But it's gorgeous. So the other one that I'm going to kind of contrast it against is another young adult, and it's House of Salt and Sorrows. I want to make sure I got that right. By Erin A. Craig. This is a debut. I say contrasted, but I'm not like putting them up against each other. I just think that they explore similar things. They're both very gothic and atmospheric. Houses play a big role. The manor in this is more of a like the legacy of the family, but they're on this remote island surrounded by water, and it's just the place in both of these novels are just so specific and so well drawn that I think that they pair very well together. So this one follows Anna Leigh. I'm bad at names. And she started with 12 sisters, and we started the funeral of her sister Eunice. I believe it's Eunice. Sorry, Eulalie. A name, I was like, I know it's a name that I know from Music Man. Eulalie McKechnie. Anyway, not Eulalie McKechnie. So her sister Eulalie, who she was very close with, is being buried at sea. Well, they have a tomb that they put. It's very vivid and great, but I don't know how to explain it to you. So she's had two sisters pass in the last like however many years, and the village is beginning to believe her family is cursed. Her mother has passed before her sisters passed, and there's a new stepmother in the picture, and at her sister's funeral, the stepmother decides to announce that she's pregnant. And it starts this kind of chain of events of what this means. Now, the inheritance rights of this world, or the island they're on, the potential son will not take over the manor, which the stepmother did not know about. But it just begins this trend. So this family that has been in mourning for years, just every time mourning ends, they have to go back in. It's like, well, what if we don't go in mourning this time? And they decide to have a ball for the, I think, twin sisters that are turning 16. They all get these fancy fairy shoes that are just like silk slippers that they can dance in. But no one at the ball wants to dance with them because they think they're all cursed. And so it starts this whole chain of events. This is a reimagining of the 12 Dancing Princesses, the fairy tale, and it has that fairy tale-esque haunted kind of feel to it. It plays with this, what is the truth? What are we supposed to believe? Very well. I've been seeing so much buzz for this book online. I really enjoyed it. There were some aspects that I would have liked to see beefed up. Some of the relationships, especially the romance, felt a little quick to me, but I think for who the target audience of this book, it's not a deal breaker at all. I think that they're going to get swept away in the romance of it, as, you know, is great. That was one of my favorite things about stories like this when I was younger. Both of these books actually made me think of this book that I loved when I was a teenager called The China Garden by Liz Berry, which is out of print. I've tried to find it. For some reason, I just won't shell out for a used copy. I had a copy. I lent it to someone in like middle school or high school. I don't know who had it. That book was set in like England or Wales or somewhere very atmospheric in the countryside, and there was a curse and a family legacy, and I'm almost afraid to read it again because I think it might be somewhat problematic now. For one, it was called The China Garden, set take place in Britain. I don't know. But I loved the atmosphere of that book. And these both feel very similar. They gave me a similar feel to what I felt when I read that book. And I was all about that book when I was a teenager. I also had less access to books, so I was rereading things more. I know I read that one a couple of times. So both A Treason of Thorns and House of Salt and Sorrow are heavily recommended from me. And they both have... I just keep repeating the same wording, so whatever. Another book I read, and I was going to talk about this in my audiobook roundup, but I think it fits here, is Ruth Ware's latest, The Turn of the Key. So it also dealt with a house and the countryside and atmosphere. I said I wasn't going to do the Ruth Ware this round because her last book, I was like, I don't know. They're very, if you like her formula, they do not disappoint, but I am not always into her formula. It just depends on my mood. This blurb made it sound like Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And I was like, oh, if you give me a governess and some hauntings, I am in. So I did it. It was a kind of update of that, but it didn't feel as ambiguous as the Henry James did. It dealt with the house maybe was haunted, but it was also this super high-tech house, but like not in a smart house kind of way. I feel like I read something else that was kind of a smart house kind of thing lately. I'll remember eventually. It was good, and I would recommend it, especially if you like the thrillers. The ending was petered out a little bit. It was very quick. I don't know how I felt about it. It had that, unreliable narrator. I will give her this. This time it wasn't just like a woman who was a drunk. No judgment, but that feels like the easy place that all of these novels go is, oh, she's unreliable because she's always drinking. We don't know if she's telling the truth. So it was interesting to read that and contrast it with these, because this was like a much more modern, Turn of the Key was a much more modern take. House of Salt and Sorrows and A Treason of Thorns both feel rooted in this fairy tale culture, in the kind of idealized English history fantasy world. With A Treason of Thorns, you've got a king, you've got manor houses, you have you're passing on your legacies. Same with House of Salt and Sorrows. This does create kind of a religion as well. Like the people on the island worship the sea god, and then there's a sky god. It didn't feel expounded on, but I didn't need for it to be expounded on necessarily. So I didn't feel like I was missing out, but it did its own thing. So The Turn of the Key, if I got that name wrong, I'm sorry. The new Ruth Ware was a different beast. It was, but it drug a little bit. It was, following our main character as she went about her daily nanny duties, and the kids don't like her, which is understandable, but there's only so much you can talk about, feeding the kids and arguing with the kids. And just like she was going mad from not having adult time, I felt like I was too. So it was an interesting contrast, but all of these will get you in the mood for fall, for some spooky season. They have great atmosphere. They're just fun. So I would definitely check them out. I will stop babbling now. I hope that I, did these books justice because I really did enjoy them. And if you've read any of them, please feel free to talk to me about them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say about any of them. So let's chat or go read them and then come back and tell me. But I definitely want to talk about these. So have a great night or day or whatever time I guess you're watching this, and we'll talk more books soon. All right, bye.